Welcome back. You're tuned in to Editors Roundtable. Well, it's time to put the spotlight on the FMCG space. And Rahul, I want your opinion on this because I recall a couple of times ago we asked you, what about the consumption slowdown? You said it's not a slowdown, it's the way India's consuming has changed. But let's put up all the data points first up for our viewers on the screen. FMCG was the sector of the week. You'll say, how come it's a sector of the week? The index itself is up only around 1%. I'll tell you what, ITC out there, well, that's the largest weight on the FMCG index. It has 35% of weightage. And for this month, it's down close to 0.5%. That's why that FMCG index is not looking like it's moved a lot. And the smaller names have moved the most. Britannia, Dabur, Marico, between them, they have only 7-8% of the FMCG index. Let's run you through the data points. What played out in the past week in particular? The commentary on the rural economy was very, very encouraging, and that's after very, very long. Some of the management's talking about green shoots. We also heard a couple of managements say that rural business, well, it outpaced the urban business, and we haven't heard that for the last 3 years or so. That's what some of the sell-side reports suggest. And now we're bracing for a good monsoon. So that's one point, rural economy coming back. The next point is they're suddenly talking about growth, whether it was Dabur, Britannia, Godrej Consumer. They're talking about high single-digit growth. Some of them are talking about some price increases as well. So growth is coming back. And after a while, even Britannia on the call sounded very, very optimistic. Point number 3 is the premiumization. Well, that seems to be a structural story that's playing out there. And, as India moves from, bottom of a pyramid consumption story to maybe a mid-income country, you're going to see the premiumization theme that picks up pace and grows at a faster clip as well. And we are at a nascent stage out there. So that's another point. And margins could look up. Operating leverage, as I told you, premiumization as well will play out. And there will be some kind of inflation which will help in the selling price. So some inflation in the system is good, actually. So you'll have some volume growth coupled with some price increase, which will brace ourselves up for revenue growth in double digits. Now, elections, well, that's the core point, right? Everyone's talking about elections. And having a longer election, particularly in summer, isn't such a bad thing. And some brokerage reports suggest that maybe, in fact, the positive outcome of this election could show up in the Q1 numbers with growth, with margins. Under ownership is another theme, because if you look at FIIs and DIs, well, they have close to 5 to 6% of their weightage to the FMCG space. And FMCG sector in the Nifty 200 itself is close to 7.5%. So there is a bit of under ownership out there. And let's wind this down with a valuation chart. You look at Dabur, HUL, Nestle, as well as Tata Consumer. In comparison to what they've traded at in the last 5 years on an average, they're trading relatively lower. Well, that's about all the points, Rahul, that fired up some of these stocks. What's your view on these FMCG stocks? Out of nowhere, a Marico, a Dabur, rallying 10%, almost 10% in a single session. Even Britannia was up. Would you jump on, or do you think the market's running ahead of itself?
No, so I think since it's a Friday, you should have plotted the alcohol stocks over
that
the
I did last week.
It's been the best performing consumer sector. I
Yeah.
think if you look at Radico, Globus,
Yeah.
United Spirits, United Breweries, Sula, all up between 40 to 60%.
So let me turn it around then. Between FMCG and the alcohol beverage companies, what would you prefer? The alcohol beverage companies have done far better. The Radico, United Spirits, United Breweries. Do you think you still tilt towards them rather than go for the FMCG names?
Okay, so I'll answer this in 2 ways. Earnings growth will be better for Alcobev
Yes.
over the next 2 years compared to consumer staples. But I think consumer staples as stocks could potentially do better because of the under ownership factor. I think you've definitely in the last 1 week seen a shift from IT to FMCG for sure. We generally tend to do this analysis and I haven't got the exact numbers, but I'm pretty sure when we look at the fund movement, you would have seen some movement away from banks and IT into FMCG. Barring ITC, like you said, and that's probably the reason you saw ITC also lower this week, because ITC has been very heavily over-owned.
Yes.
If you remember when the run in ITC started, it was trading at about 25-26 times multiple. That has got reset in a very big way. So that is ownership. But if I was buying earnings, I think if I look at a United Breweries, it's going to do what, a 700 crore EBITDA or something like that is what it did this year. Our call is that it's probably going to go to at least 2.5x in 2 years. And if you look at most consumer companies' valuations, the likes that you listed, were between 40 to 45 times, the names that you took.
Yeah.
Historically, when FMCG companies' earnings compound at 15%, these guys can trade between 50 to 55 times.
Yeah.
So there is a 20% trade there to be made. So I think if I was playing it through stocks, because I think if you look at most of the Alcobev stocks, including UNSP and United Breweries, you'd be trading at very, very high multiples right now. They'll be close to 55 times already, 55 times. So I think staples presents a better opportunity in terms of stock price appreciation because of the under ownership. But earnings is definitely going to be happening more on the discretionary side, particularly in Alcobev.
Well, appreciate you joining in, Rahul, today and discussing all those sectors as well as themes with us. So wishing you a good weekend, and we'll discuss alcohol beverage companies. So let's get straight to that. For the time being, we'll wrap up on this edition of Editors Roundtable. Thanks so much for watching. Stay tuned. More news and updates on the other side.